He would go on a murder spree because some kids pissed him off? Okay. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of the massacre at Palm Bay. Viewer discretion is advised. Just a heads up, this may be a shorter video than normal. I am a little under the weather, a very stuffy nose, so it sucks talking. At any rate, let's get into today's story. This case happened in the city of Palm Bay, Florida, back in 1987. It was April 23rd, 1987, at approximately 6 p.m. An older man named William Brian Cruz would pull up to a neighbor's house. There was a couple kids playing out in the front of the house. He is driving his Toyota Celica, a white vehicle, and he is armed with a shotgun, a pistol, and a couple other weapons. He takes out the shotgun, he points it at one of the kids playing in the front of their home, and he fires it at him, sending buckshot into this 14-year-old boy. The man also fired at the boy's brother and his father, and then eventually the mother came out hearing all the commotion, and he fired towards her as well. Now, luckily, none of these individuals died. They all survived. So this young boy, apparently, over the past days leading into this older man got into arguments with these kids who were playing in the neighborhood. William Brian Cruz Jr. was originally from Kentucky. He was a retired librarian, and he moved to Palm Bay, Florida in around 1985 or so with his wife, who sadly had Parkinson's disease. Right from the get-go, though, neighbors in this area were terrified of William. They thought he was scary. They thought he was creepy. They thought he was just really grouchy all the time. Never saw him happy once. One day when kids were playing outside, he literally walks out of his home, takes a gun, fires it several times in the air to scare them. He constantly screamed and cussed at them, telling them to get away, go back to your home. He would, use a lot of foul language towards them. He even at one point grabbed his crotch and gestured towards these kids. And these kids, being kids, were like, okay, this guy's creepy, and we're going to make fun of him. And so they made fun of him all the time. This would cause all of these back and forth arguments with these kids, and one of those kids was the 14-year-old boy he had just shot in his driveway. William then drives his car down to the local shopping center, the Palm Bay Shopping Center. He takes out an assault rifle and a shotgun and a pistol and a backpack completely full top to bottom of ammunition, more bullets. Using the assault rifle, he approached two shoppers, one named Nabil Al-Hamali and Imad Al-Tawakkuli. I'm so sorry if I said those names wrong. They had been walking out of the store when William was walking in. William just saw them, pointed the gun, fired at both of them, killed them both instantly. He also shot a third individual who was with those two, because they were all together, but that person would survive. He then turned his weapon on a man named Douglas Pollock. He fired several times towards him, but Douglas Pollock would end up surviving. He then managed to shoot another man named Eric Messerbauer. He was actually in front of the Kmart store that was next to the grocery store. He also ends up surviving. A woman named Ruth Green at the same time was pulling into the parking lot and parking in front of the Publix store. William points one of the guns at her and shoots her. She sadly dies. William then circles back. He walks towards the two men he first shot, and he makes sure they're dead by pointing the gun at them point blank in their head and fires one more round into each of their heads. At this point, 911 is already called. There's officers on the way. William gets into his car. He then drives across the street to the Sabal Palm Square Shopping Center, and he pulled in front of the area of the Winn-Dixie grocery store, where again, he kind of just very calmly, very sure of himself, gets out of the car, takes his weapons, and as he's doing that, Officer Ronald Grogan had pulled into that parking lot. William sees this and fires several rounds at him. He then ran out of ammunition, so he inserted another round of ammunition into the gun, the assault weapon, and he fired it again towards the officer's vehicle, and several bullets would enter Officer Grogan's body, and he would die. It appeared that William was really determined to kill him by Once the gun was out of bullets, he then put more in there and he just continued just firing like crazy at the cop car. Another cop by the name of Gerald Johnson had also pulled into the shopping center pretty much right as the first officer did. Officer Johnson gets out of his car, and that's when William sees him and fires at him and shoots Officer Johnson in the leg. William then casually walks up to the officer, Johnson, who is now on the ground. He then walks directly up to him, points his gun right at Officer Johnson, and fires several more rounds into his body, killing him as well. William then enters the Winn-Dixie store. At this point, everyone is running. They're screaming. They're leaving the building as fast as they can. They're going out the emergency exits. And he finds himself to the back of the store where he catches people trying to escape and he fires several bullets at them. He would wound many people during this, and he also had shot a man named Lester Watson. Lester Watson had taken many bullets, and unfortunately, he also died. Later, it was determined he had several gunshot wounds to his back. He enters a bathroom and he finds two women, Judy Larson and Robin Brown. Now, they're positive he's about to open fire and kill them both, but he chooses not to. He actually tells Judy Larson, go outside, tell the cops to turn off all of the lights in the building. And he kept Robin Brown inside the store with him as a hostage. At that point, he attempts to negotiate with police, but it doesn't really seem like that was really his plan anyway. And it really never leads to anything. Now, Robin would later state that while she was terrified, she was doing everything she could think of to make sure that he was calm and to kind of ease him down a little bit. And she would like get him water, just like, here's some water, have something to drink. Like she was really trying to save her life by doing whatever she could to make sure this man doesn't get mad and shoot her. And eventually, William actually lets her leave. He actually just says, go, you can get out of here. Now we have several cops there, and they are all firing tear gas and everything into the store. He flees out of the back of the store, but there are officers waiting for him, where they finally are able to knock him down, and they apprehend him. They slap the cuffs on him, put him under arrest. William Cruz ended the life of 6 people. Nobil al-Hameli, Inud al-Tawakuli, Ruth Green, Officer Ronald Grogan, Officer Gerald Johnson, and Lester Watson. Ruth Green, the oldest victim, was 67 years old. Inud al-Tawakuli was the youngest victim at 18. He also severely injured 14 other people who would be hospitalized, some for an extended period of time, some were released fairly quickly, but thankfully they were able to survive. When he was apprehended and when he was in basically the interrogation room, he was trying to say he had no idea what he did. He said he doesn't remember doing any of the shooting. He was trying to play the crazy card, I think, to make it look like he was less guilty of what he did. But really no one was believing that. You had a history of him being extremely belligerent, almost violent towards kids in his neighborhood. He loads up his car with several guns and prepares a whole backpack full of ammunition. He knew what he was doing. He tried to shoot, or he did shoot, a 14-year-old kid on his driveway who luckily survived. He tried to shoot other people in the neighborhood. He then gets into his car, he drives to a grocery store, and for whatever reason, decides to open fire. Later, it would be revealed that William Cruz really, really hated homosexuals. He really hated gay people. Shocker. Well, apparently, according to one story, there had been people who had been working at one of the store who thought William Cruz himself was gay. They made comments or suggestions that he might be gay, and he really freaking hated that. He was not a fan, and that could be the reason as to why he targeted one of the stores. He seemed to have a lot of anger and resentment towards police officers because the 2 people who had the most gunshot wounds in their bodies were the 2 officers. Like, he unloaded on both of them. He did try to plead not guilty based on insanity, but it didn't work. You had witnesses who were able to describe in detail his behavior in each of the stores. The neighborhood can, in detail, describe what they witnessed that same day. They saw a man who acted calmly, that this was very deliberate for him, that he knew what he was doing. It wasn't something that, like, they didn't see anything crazy in his eyes or anything. It was just, This seemed to be targeted. He was going after people on purpose. And he went on a rampage, killing 6 people. So he was charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, and false imprisonment, as well as several other charges, lesser charges. On April 5th, 1989, William Cruz is found guilty of all of the charges laid against him. On July 28th, 1989, the jury sentences him to death for the 2 police officers. The other 4 victims, he was sentenced to 100 years in prison without parole. To go along with the other charges, he received a total of about 103 years in prison without parole, plus the 2 death penalties. There were people who were like, well, how come it was just the cops that he got the death penalty for, not the other 4? Were they treated differently, so to speak? And there is some belief that maybe they were, but based on his behavior towards the cops, just how aggressively he went after them, how he just continued to unload on them, that their 2 deaths seem to be the most cruel, I guess. And so that's their justification as to why he got the death for those 2. Regardless, the man's going to be executed. He was, everybody got justice here, and he was going to be killed. He actually sat on death row because this was all happening in 1987, and all the way up until 2009, he still had not been executed, which is insane that it took, that it takes that long for that process to happen. I've told cases in the past where people have been sentenced to death and their execution is carried out within a couple of years. But I think as time goes on, as the legal system advances, now that there's more, they have to be able to exhaust all of their possible appeals before they can carry out that death sentence. But regardless, on November 29th, 2009, William Cruz would not die by the electric chair, which is what he was sentenced to. Instead, he died of natural causes before the execution could ever take place. He was an 82-year-old man at the time of his death. He was cruel. He was determined. He seemed to be level-headed in terms of knowing what he was doing. He seemed to be in complete control of himself when he was doing what he did. This was a monster, plain and simple. He tried to murder a child. Actually, he tried to murder 2 children that day because his brother, the kid's brother, was also shot at. He wounded 14 people at the stores, and then he murdered 6 other people, including 2 police officers. The guy deserved what he got, and hopefully his death was painful. I'm not sorry to say. But in the end, all 6 victims, or really, if you want to include everyone, all 20 plus victims, including the ones who did not die, they were able to get the justice they very rightfully deserved. But that is it for this case. True crime, a Rooney, Dooney, Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, if you're new here, hello, my name is Mike. I tell true crime stories here on TikTok. Nope, this is not TikTok. On YouTube is where I'm located right now. That's where I tell these stories. Great. Good job, Mike. Okay. So feel free to subscribe if you're into true crime. Give the video a like, leave a comment. That way more people can see it. And if you want to see the short form true crime stories I tell over on TikTok, the link to my TikTok is also in the description below. And in that description, you will also find my case list in the link tree. The case list is over 7,300 names long. I typically choose cases at random. However, if you are a loved one to a missing or murdered person, or maybe their case is solved, you want their story told, let me know you're a family member, and then I can make sure that case gets a top priority. Otherwise, I pick cases at random. You can email me the case recommendations. My email is listed below. All I really need to know is the name of the case, where it happened, and when it happened. And then I'll add it to the list. And I'll get to it eventually. But that is it for this video, True Crime, a Rooney, Dooney, Dingleberry Dong. So until the next case, ta-ta for now. Ugh.